Hello, Seattle Science Foundation. My name is Chet Donnelly. I'm a spine surgeon here in my hometown of Dallas, Texas. Today I have the privilege of speaking on augmented reality and spine surgery. I'm going to talk about the current state of the art and future possibilities. In terms of my disclosure, initially these slides were made by my junior partner of 1 year and best friend, Dr. A.J. Rush. I thought this picture of him in a skeleton outfit is appropriate for the talking about seeing through the body and seeing through the bones. Technically, I am a consultant for Augmetics, but to date, I have made a total of $0 from working with them. So I jokingly say also my mentor, Dr. Alex Vaquero, would be very mad at me for maximizing consulting opportunities. Okay, so let's get right into it. What are the different types of reality? Because some people don't totally know what augmented reality is. People get it confused, understandably, with virtual reality. And the way I think about it is virtual reality is like you're fully immersed in it, looking around. There's cartoon characters all around you. And that's in a way like when we think about video games, cartoon characters, laser tag, like laser virtual reality, that's what that is. Augmented reality is a bit different. It's pretty much overlaying the 3D images, the virtual images with the actual setting you're in. And so a lot of that I show is kind of like when you're driving your car, you have the heads up display. You're still seeing the road, you're still seeing the signs, but there's added things that help augment your actual day-to-day living. So again, virtual reality is kind of like Tron, the movies, the Matrix, you could even say. I don't know if that's totally true, but Matrix, where it's all just kind of fake. Augmented reality is like that Pokemon game you saw the big craze of in 2021, where you're walking around and using your phone or some type of electronic device and you can see the world around you. There's just added things to it. So what are some other ways to think about it? The military is really who first started coming up with augmented reality. Like all fancy things, the military, NASA, creating new technologies, that's essentially where augmented reality started. They wanted a way for our pilots to not be distracted. They wanted them to be able to see the targets in front of them, their gas, where the missiles are going. I don't know anything about planes or the military, but you can understand where having it in front of you decreases your reaction time. It makes you much more aware of what's going on, and it's a better way to do it than looking around and trying to find the things that you need. What are some real world applications of AR? So think of it this way in terms of airport navigation. With Google Meta glasses and other technologies, you'd be walking around the airport and there's a way to find things. If you ever go skiing, snow skiing, snowboarding, same thing. People use this all the time on their cell phones, but in terms of being built in, showing your speed, showing you which routes to go, showing you where your friends are, text messages coming up, there's kind of a need for that. Do you have to have it? Not necessarily. And same with those annoying bikers on the road. Same thing. They could be using it to track their speed, track their mileage, track where they're going. Probably not tracking where cars are on the road. That would be helpful, but they don't do that. But then the question is, look, do we even need all this stuff? Like, this is cool, but do we need it? Same thing with augmented reality, right? The quick answer is yes, we do need it. It's another tool to make you more accurate and efficient in the airport, skiing, biking, many real world uses for it. And in spine surgery, it's another way to make the surgeon more accurate and efficient for pedicle screw placement. I think one of the biggest hurdles to maybe adopting augmented reality might be a surgeon isn't doing much minimally invasive surgery. Now, if you're part of Seattle Science Foundation, you're watching this, you're actively involved, you probably are a minimally invasive surgeon, at least on LinkedIn. You probably write that about yourself. But in reality, you probably are using minimally invasive principles, minimally invasive techniques. So that's step one. You have to kind of buy into that. Look, can you do these cases, big open incisions using the technology? Of course. That's a great way to use augmented reality also. But one of the main ways to do this is from the navigation aspects of it. And when I talk about navigation, you're going to see what I'm talking about. So here's kind of what it looks like. And again, this is the platform of Augmetics. That's just the one I'm most familiar with. But you put on the headset, and after you do your spin, you can look down and through the skin, you see the bones. And it's a great, efficient way to start your landmarks. And this is exactly what the screen looks like. There's two boxes and one circle, three different visualization areas. The green one at the bottom there shows you exactly what you're seeing. in real time. And then the X-ray or the CT reformats on the top is the axial and sagittal. And so the way I do it is I start on one side. I don't have the 𝐀𝐮𝐠𝐦𝐞𝐽 skill set to do everything from the contralateral side, but from one side, I do drill, drill, tap, tap, bone graft for posterolateral fusions, and then place my screws and go to the other side. This is for real exactly how it looks. You also have your reps, and I'll show you another video on the back table that will help planning the screws, marking your levels, marking trajectories. Other augmented reality systems don't have the rep do it necessarily, and the surgeon can do it, and that's maybe a pro or con on different systems, but I'm not really trying to advertise at all for one system versus the other. So look, this all sounds expensive and dumb. What are the other options? Okay, well, you could do this all with fluoroscopic imaging, right? That's fine. That's how we've been doing it forever. And does that mean that's how we should keep doing it? I don't know. That's your choice. Fluoroscopic imaging is high radiation to the patient, high radiation to the surgeon, high radiation to your staff, your PA, your anesthesiologist. It's very tech dependent. And if you're maybe a younger spine surgeon, you might not have the best x-ray techs. They might be reserved for the more senior and more skilled surgeons in your department. So fluoroscopic imaging, very x-ray dependent. There's also not great efficiency. Having to go in and out to AP and laterals, it's kind of a beatdown, and they take up a lot of space. Well, great. We all use navigation these days, right? Is that the gold standard? Who knows? So let's talk about traditional navigation and robots. Oof, those are quite expensive. Those robots can be $1 million. They take up a whole lot of space, and if it's a surgery center or not even a huge hospital, when that spine surgeon's not there, those things are taking up a huge place in the hall. There's also a significant learning curve, and it takes maybe 30 cases to get that. There's also line of sight issues. We used to have something in fellowship where if you ever blocked the array, you had to pay $1, and that was one way to teach you not to get your hand in front of the array to block the line of sight from the field. What the headsets do on all these augmented reality platforms, instead of having the tower at the foot of the bed or head of the bed if you're doing cervical pathology, is your headset is the array. Same with your physician assistant or assistant you have with you. The headset is the array, and that's what's looking at your tools. Ooh, this all sounds pretty hard, is it? Well, maybe not. Actually, the learning curve is pretty typical to other things. There's a great study from the famous institution, Rush, one of the most famous spine surgeons out there, Frank Phillips, and his colleagues, Alexander Butler, who's now at Lenox Hill. They looked into this, and they said that the learning curve is pretty similar to other technologies where, it's probably either a 3 months or 30 case learning curve. So what are the benefits? Look, in terms of augmented reality, there's many, many studies showing that navigation has improved pedicle accuracy with navigation. There's less shifted focus. You're looking right at that area as opposed to looking up, looking at the screens and getting somewhat distracted. Of course, not just with AR, but all navigation, there's less radiation to the surgeon. And in general, it's a faster operative speed. And some of this is really dependent on your place in terms of getting in the O arm in versus the C arm in. So hard to totally compare that, but a lot of this is benefits of navigation. So why do we like this? Why do I like this? And here's some pictures of different surgeons wearing the headset. It's intuitive. This is where you're looking on surgery. You're not looking away and trying to, not look at your surgical field. Yes, you need to stop for a CT spin, but that's fine. But it's during that time when it's a well-oiled machine. Either my hardware rep or my Augmetics rep comes out and they put the headset on me. So one of my pro tips is I would actually train up your hardware rep to put on the helmet. And when I say train them up, I mean, is that 1 or 2 cases? It's not hard to teach someone to put on a helmet because I have my Augmetics rep or my augmented reality rep who's in there programming the computer during the spin. And so without wasting any time, I have my other rep, my hardware rep, who's putting the helmet on me. In terms of the learning curve, personally, anecdotally, I think it's a pretty short learning curve. I think it's pretty easy to do. And the nice thing about this compared to robotics or pretty much robotics, it's an open platform. You essentially can use any hardware you want. You don't have to use a certain hardware and get a rebate back from the hospital. You don't have to use a certain hardware, so it's very intuitive. It can go with any system. So here's what a headset looks like. And again, I've made $0 from Augmetics, but I'm just showing this because I have a lot of their slides just because they're out there very easily. And this is one of the older, more used system that's out there. But this is the first generation headset. And here's how it looks like. You have this bright light in the front in case you want to do any of the open surgery. You have the eye fields that go in there. It allows for free workplace environment. And this is what the headset is. They've recently come out, as recently as a couple months ago, with their second generation headset. I've been fortunate enough to be one of the few people that's actually used it so far, and it's slick. I mean, it's everything's better about it. Again, I don't want to stand on a pedestal here and talk about the company, but it's great. It's almost like televisions back in the day. They used to be big and bulky. Oh, I can't go back. They used to be big and bulky, and now they're getting smaller and cheaper, and that's like all technologies, right? So again, here's what you see. I know we talked about this a little. You see under the skin, you have the axial view, you have the sagittal view, and it helps you plan your instrumentation. In terms of the headset view, it really does look like this. You're looking through the tissue to see the bones, to see the mammillary process, and additionally, it's a great way to help teach your residents or fellows starting points. It's a great way that I've been able to teach my physician assistant different anatomies, show her the pars fracture, checking the cage placement. It's just a really nice way to do it. This is a big aspect of it too. It comes with a monitor. Most of the systems do. And this is really what it looks like. So those 4 trajectories are where I've already done my navigated burr. I burr down pretty deep. I use a long handle burr. That's another pro tip you want to do when you start doing this, to use the long handle burr. And then they mark my level, and then I come back with a tap, and then they remark the level, and then I put bone graft there, so I'm not trying to get under the tulips at that point, and then we put the screw. Another nice part about augmented reality as opposed to freehand navigation is it comes with a rep, and the rep is great, and they're experienced. Sometimes when I'm doing freehand navigation at certain hospitals I don't use this at, I have the Medtronic or the O-arm rep, and maybe they don't totally know my flow. They're different every time, and it's not a learning curve, whereas this comes with a rep, and I think that's a nice thing. Reps are really important. Here's my workflow in terms of just showing you the ease of any of these augmented reality systems. Look, before I even come in the room, it's already been calibrated. They have the chicken foot, the T-handle, the navigation devices, and they've already calibrated the instruments. The patient comes in the room, drape out the patient. We usually do the inner bodies first. Now there's a lot of debate in terms of screw first, inner body first. I could talk about that for a long time. Maybe it also depends if I use like the Zeem versus the O-arm on what hospital I'm at. So happy offline to talk to people about that. But usually I place the interbody first. Then we do the O-arm spin, tool verification, and then place our screws. Some other neat usages of it is it really helps me navigate my hands looking directly at it and find new trajectories. Now you might look at that being like, yeah, the robot can do that too. Cool. Well, so can this. You might think, oh, freehand nav, I can do that also. Yeah, cool. But I'm like looking directly at it, so my way's better because I said it is. Half joking, but it's just a nice usage of having your hand there, looking at the trajectory, not having to look around and try to go right for it. Additionally, if you want to mallet at all, again, you're looking right at it when you're doing it, doing the mallet. You don't have to be looking to the side or kind of guessing or looking away. Another aspect that I use it for all the time is really easy and efficient to find the facets. Yes, I know what you're going to say. Freehand nav, can't we do facet decortication also? Sure, but I'm like looking at the facets. I'm not looking at the reconstructed axial sagittal views. I'm looking at the augmented reality and knowing what the facet is, and it allows for a really aggressive facet decortication. And another thing recently in terms of we've moved to is using it for interbody placement. I do believe this is an off-label use, and so what I've used it for is placing my guide probe into the disc space, and that helps me get my starting point really efficiently, saving a lot of fluoroscopic imaging time because we do our spin. It helps me get to the disc space. I do believe it's an off-label use, but in terms of what are the next stages of it, that's part of it, is using a dilator to get to the disc space to do my interbody work. Definitely one of the next steps for this technology. What are some other things? Well, it's not crazy at all to think with AI, ChatGPT, whatever you want to call it, it can help with osteotomy planning. It can scan the spine and say, hey, here's where you need to shave. Move your hand right here, cut the facets here and here, and this will help with your reconstruction of the sagittal imbalance. Additionally, Decompression assistance is coming in the future. Endoscopic guidance, why can't we do this through an endoscope? Well, that's a technology question that can be fixed. Can we combine this with the robot? Probably. And is real-time feedback kind of pushing back? Yes, we already have that. And those are some things I'm saying. Given the smaller headset, it's already smaller. Can it get to the size of the glasses I'm wearing, making it even smaller? Yes. Can we use the technology that's already there on other systems to use an MRI instead of a CT to do it? Maybe a pre-op MRI, and that's great for now for ambulatory surgery center use. The headsets might be, well, it just varies on different systems, but maybe they're around $250,000, whereas a robot is a full $1 million. So if we can find a cheaper way to do it, that's great. So is augmented reality part of the future? Probably. It makes us better surgeons. It helps us stay efficient. There's not a huge financial burden to getting one of these compared to some of the other technology that are out there. And it's easy. In a way, it depends on the system you're using, but if you go to different hospitals, it's easy to transport. And that also varies company to company if they let you do that. Different argument. I'm sure all these companies want you to buy one headset per hospital, but in general, like, why couldn't my headset be mine and I just take it to different hospitals? That's a great way to think about it. So in general, my question is, what's your goal with augmented reality? Are you trying to be faster? Are you trying to be safer? Are you trying to make it easier? In the beginning, just like all these technologies we're talking about today, sometimes just getting the staffing and start going is a huge bottleneck. Will this technology make you a busier surgeon? Will it make you a faster surgeon? Hard to say, but that's part of the things we think about. And then I also say support your peers. It's something where if you're starting this technology, if you have questions about it, those are different ways to get in touch with me. I'm happy to put my cell phone number somewhere. I'd be really flattered if you reached out and wanted to ask me about it. But I think it's a great piece of technology. It's definitely part of the future, and I just really appreciate Seattle Science Foundation for allowing me to speak on this.